Alright, I got something to say. I would like to amend something. Butterfly, I don't want to hit a butterfly. Not today. There's a pitfall with non-duality that I am familiar with, I have experienced, but I continue to step into. And I do recognize that this isn't a mistake, this is not a failing. This is a part of experiencing and learning and expanding awareness. But I had an experience last night. I had a panic attack and a really good conversation, with my wife. And I realized, again, with more clarity this time than any time before, how, like anything, really truly anything, non-duality, non-dual teaching can absolutely be used to escape instead of facing and feeling, and really being present with what's happening. And when there is such an emphasis on the being, perceiving the isness, that the what, which is being, becomes minimized and actually trivialized, that it can turn into just a different version of denial. A different version of denial, not acceptance, denial of what has happened, of what is happening. Denial of what is, rather than acceptance. Have used non-duality in a way internally, or rather it has happened within me. The mind has used it as found a way to use it as a defense mechanism, to actually avoid the facing of experience, the reality of experience. So it gets caught up kind of talking around the what of what is. And I do find it beneficial to keep the being, the isness in focus. But this is a reminder to myself, not to the extent that it is denying the what. That's not acceptance. That's not acceptance. That's not truth. That is just denial. That is just reframing this again in another way that makes it so I don't have to see. I don't have to feel certain things. Because what is being is being. And yes, the being is the underlying consistent field. There's a deeper, more persistent kind of reality there, but that does not mean the what doesn't exist. It doesn't mean the what isn't real. The experiencing of it, experiencing what is, that's very real. These are real experiences. And I have had real experiences of situations and sensations that did feel painful. The experience was painful. The experience was very scary. The experience was tremendously challenging. I have experienced terror, sustained fear. And I recognize that if I were in the same situations now, I would likely experience them fairly differently. They would probably not create such an intense sensation. Still, the way that they were experienced, what my experience was, is valid. It did happen. I did experience those things. Those things did happen. There's a dog on a motorcycle in front of me. It's so cute. And so I don't want to, I recognize that the mind has used non-duality as a way to deny the reality of experience, to call it unreal, to just find a different way to call it unreal, and therefore invalid, essentially. It does not have the layers of meaning that were once assigned to it, but it did happen. I'm reaffirming this to myself, and I'll explain a little bit more what I'm talking about. But I am accepting that things that I have experienced, I did experience, and that while there is a deep truth of the being of all, and that everything is kind of this game and this role playing that we are experiencing, it is still real, it is still happening, and it is not making up a story to just relay the experience. It ventures into more of this untruth, kind of just nebulous, confused, not really true territory when things get layered upon the base level experience itself. So here's an example of that, and this is what has happened. This is what I have experienced. For 10 years of my life here, I was in a relationship that was abusive. And when I say that word, I don't say it with malice or judgment against. I can say it now with really just a feeling of sort of clarity and calm. There's no blaming happening with that word. The relationship did not function in a way that was respectful of both parties, and it was a very scary feeling environment. It was a very scary feeling environment. again, it's not a blameful word. There's nothing layered. What I mean by I'm not telling a story, but still telling this truth of what has happened, of what the experience has been, is that I'm not layering on things like it shouldn't have happened. It was bad that it happened. It was wrong that it happened. And something should have prevented this. That any person was wrong or bad in their involvement in this. That I am just a victim. I'm a victim of abuse. And then there's this painting of self and other, of me versus them. It's leaving all of that out to just say that this happened. This happened, and I recognize that and accept truly that nothing happens without my consent at a deep level. That I absolutely did choose this in a way, and again, there's no blaming because nothing has gone wrong here. Nothing has gone wrong here. So there's nobody to blame for anything when nothing has gone wrong. This is just a situation that unfolded. This is an experience that did actually happen. So when I take ownership of my participation in it, it's not in a judgmental way, not in a diminishing way. Nobody is diminished here. But it's taken to this point. I am now, when did we? It was, I think, 2022 that situation ended. Well, the relationship ended. The situation continued in a different form up until last year, actually. And I had not acknowledged, I have not fully acknowledged to myself what happened. I wanted so quickly to move on because I had been in this place of I can't let myself feel because it's not safe to let myself feel. Because this is not a safe environment. I'm not safe here. And so I cannot feel anything. I have to be strong. Or else it could catastrophically erupt in a way that is harmful to me. And there are layers of shame and stuff folded in with that. Feeling like perhaps I would be giving up on this person, I would be abandoning them, to actually acknowledge my feelings of pain and fear here, and to remove myself from the situation. But it would be so damaging to them. It would be so unfair to them. That's one of the stories that was in my head for a long time, because this person had a very difficult life experience. They started out in the world in a really, really rough place, and with just a really hard time. And the experiences that they had very early and throughout their life clearly were things that they didn't feel safe feeling, and avoided feeling, and then that just, spilled over onto me. But of course, and again, this isn't the failing, it's just the way that these things unfold. Neither of us had that kind of awareness. I certainly didn't have the awareness to recognize if I had the awareness that I have now. Hindsight is always 20/20, but if I had the awareness, the level of awareness that I have at this moment, I would have recognized very early on what was happening, and I wouldn't stayed. And it would have been as simple as that. There wouldn't have been this confusion over, well, aren't I responsible for your feelings? And I'm trying to make myself feel complete by sort of fixing you. But this obsession with fixing you is a projection of my feeling of brokenness and blah, 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 blah. I didn't realize, of course, that everything that we perceive is coming from within. We're perceiving it from in here. So if something looks broken, there's a smudge on the lens, you know? And that is for me to explore and experience and not judge, but expand myself to see around that smudge and find new perspectives and so on and so forth. This is not a new story or an unusual story of experience. In fact, curiously enough, it seems that it is so common right now that there are actually like skits and stuff. It's a part of internet subculture to, you know, talk about the friend who leaves a toxic relationship and what that's like when they start experiencing the world on their own, when they experience people who are not behaving in an abusive way towards them, and they're shocked and confused. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening en masse right now. We're waking up. We're waking up. But what that has meant for me is I got out of that situation, but I still never acknowledged that it did affect me. That 10 years of walking on eggshells, of feeling like I lived in a minefield, and denying that to myself the whole time. Denying to myself that I felt scared. Denying to myself that I felt unsafe and unseen and angry and afraid. 10 years of repression. Repression primarily of fear, but also anger. Does things to the nervous system of the body. It does things. It has an effect. I did experience that did happen, and it did affect me. Now again, did it change my being? No, of course not. Everything is still secure and stable at the level of being. But the experience that being is having is of insecurity, is of instability, is of finally letting in these feelings that I blocked out for so long because I didn't feel safe to feel unsafe. Really, truly, it felt like it could cost me or someone their life. At the least, some sort of physical harm. And so I'm just accepting that I have used many things, including non-dual teaching, to escape the reality of this experience. That this happened, and it was traumatic. It was traumatic. I was not in a place where I was able to process what was happening to me as it was happening. And for a decade, that went on. And now I am outside of it, kind of extracted from this war zone of my own making. And I'm coming down, and I'm feeling the effects of sustained vigilance. sustained vigilance, sustained denial of my experience. I am absolutely aware that there's nothing right or wrong here. Again, nothing went wrong. Nothing bad in a true way happened. But the experience was real, and it was painful, and it did hurt, and it was scary. And I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but I am talking to myself, the self, the part in here. I am talking to the part in here that has pushed this away for so long, to just reassure it that it's okay to feel this now, that it's okay to feel this, period. The internal gaslighting has been strong for a long time. And being in an environment for a sustained duration where you are questioned repeatedly, where your experience is questioned, where the way that you remember, the way that you feel is questioned, and in fact you're often told how you feel by someone else who asserts it with great authority, and an implied sort of threat underneath of don't you dare contradict me. That does things. That does things to undermine one's acceptance of the validation of their own experience, particularly when that one didn't have a very strong sense of that internal authority, internal validation of what is happening, I am feeling it, and I don't need it to be shared. I don't need anyone else to perceive it the way that I am. What I am feeling is what I am feeling, essentially, and I don't need you to believe it or to affirm it to me. I didn't have that. I didn't have that. And not only did I not have that, I was made to understand that it was not safe to have that. It was not safe for me to validate my own experiences. And so it's been tricky finding the middle ground between awareness of being and truth, and not fabricating, not adding to stories about what is, but also genuinely facing and accepting what is, seeing the totality of it, that it is being, and it is being what is, that the what is not irrelevant. It's not dangerous. It doesn't have meaning in this way that our minds interpret things and say, well, what is means this. Something uncomfortable and negative happening to me means bad, means that this is a bad thing, means that bad things happen to me, means that I'm probably a bad person. None of that. But the reality of, yes, this did happen. Once again, yes, this did happen, and yes, you did experience it as negative, and that's not wrong either. that you experienced this as pain, that you experienced this as scary. That is the experience, and that is not bad. That isn't wrong. Whatever experience you had is not incorrect. And it did happen, and it was real. And it's time for me to accept that. Because I want to. So that's where I'm at. And that's all I really wanted to say. Is I recognize that I have it's easy for me to become obsessed with hyper-focus on the being of what is in order to actually kind of obscure the what. And that's a habit. And I'm becoming more aware of it. And aware that both are beautiful, both are important. Neither one is threatening in any way. This is just, you know, the things that get distracting, the stories, are really the judgments about what is, not the just objective, well, this is what happened, you know. I was in a car with this person who was drunk, and I did not know, and they were driving, and I didn't know if we were going to make it where we were trying to go. And I did have that experience. That really happened. That's not saying anything about anybody. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean they're bad, I'm bad, that this was wrong, that this was bad. It means this happened and this was scary. This felt scary. That's it. You know, that's it. And I can tell that clearly and without confusion. And without hard feelings. I can acknowledge that I experienced anger. I experienced betrayal. I experienced deep hurt. Absolutely. That happened. Those experiences were real. I can also recognize that I am is not marred or injured in any way. In fact, it is bigger and stronger and more beautiful feeling than ever. But those experiences happened. They were real. I need to keep saying this to myself. And this doesn't have to mean anything to anybody. But maybe this one will find someone who has not had the space and the safety to acknowledge something to themselves that they did in fact experience, that did in fact happen. It doesn't mean that they were bad or that anything went wrong, but it was painful and it was scary and it was real. So if that person is you, or even if it's not, but it's okay. It is safe to feel those things now. It is not wrong that you experienced this. It did happen. And you are not alone. Nothing has gone wrong. The hurt, the pain, the fear. It's okay to let it happen now. It's okay to let that be felt now. Now you can let down. Now you can let go. Now you can let the feelings of terror in and acknowledge that they exist. And you did feel them, and you are feeling them. It's okay. You don't have to hold it back anymore. Hold it in, hold it together. You can acknowledge it. And you can feel it, and there is nowhere you need to be or need to go. And you can recognize the being of what is, and you can recognize the what that is being. And you can hold both together as valid and real and beautiful and true. And you can trust your experience. That is real. That is yours. That is true. And you don't need anybody else to agree with it, to confirm it for you, to tell you what it is. You don't need that. You can just feel and know that you are feeling, and know that it is real, and that it is not wrong, that you are not wrong. This is true. This is happening. You can be here fully. You are here fully. This is where you are. And we are here together. And I know, because that is my experience. That is my experience. And I know it is true. I trust it. And I trust you to have yours. And I trust the reality and the truth of your experience. That's my cue. I love you so, so much.